Good. All right. Okay. Okay. Is that now, or are you still pushing buttons? All right. Okay. Okay, Rachel, I'm gonna start by just doing my normal podcast interview or my podcast
Yeah,
intro. Okay.
perfect.
Was there something else, Phil? That's a good idea. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Us and Kids podcast. I am so glad you're here with us today. We have got a special guest who knows an awful lot about things I don't know anything about, but things that you are going to want to know about. Her name is Rachel Greer, and she is here to help us understand how to make sure that what we're taking home into our places where our little kids are living and enjoying everyday life, how to be sure that those things we're bringing in are safe and are good for our kiddos and for us. So, you know, and I know that being married is not easy. Adding little ones to it is a lot of more energy. We don't need to be worried about all of the other anxieties that can come with unpacking something and going, this isn't okay. And now having to take the time to send it back or put it away or try to refix it ourselves. We're not interested, right? Time and efforts have to go into just taking care of into just taking care of our little ones. And so that's why Rachel has joined us today. She is a former Amazon employee who worked in the areas of compliance in helping the sellers to Amazon understand what they had to do to be sure their products were safe before they got shipped over to your house. From what I can tell, Rachel worked hard at doing this. She met tragic story after tragic story and wasn't interested anymore in being the person to have to listen to the sadness of a family's heart and mind and just emotional set that said, we're broken because the toy broke. Our little one is damaged or is gone because the toy wasn't okay. And you and I know we never want that heartache, which is why Rachel moved into different spaces and was willing to share what she learned with us by writing a book called No Dead Babies. And it's not just sad stories, it's full of wisdom and insight about how to discern whether what you're buying is really worthwhile, is really safe. And so, Rachel, welcome to the program. I'm so glad that you are here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Mhm. Um, so if you want to just add a little bit more about where you are, how this has impacted you as a mom. I think you have a little one or two at home, um, and that certainly played into um, how you felt about the products that were coming in through Amazon and the structures that were needed but not really there to make sure products were safe.
Absolutely. So when I first started working on product safety for Amazon, it was about 12 years ago. And this was when
Mhm.
Amazon had just launched, the baby department had launched like 5 or 6 years before. So these weren't like new initiatives. These are initiatives that had been around for a while. They had the toys department that had been around for a while.
Mhm.
And we were basically working on taking down recalled items, things that were proven to be unsafe,
Oh.
or investigating items where a customer had left a review that said something like, my baby choked on this, or my child was playing with this and it cut their finger and we had to go to the ER, or any number of other kinds of terrible reviews that you would get, trying to solve these issues for customers. And at the time that I started, Amazon was selling millions of units a day, and I was the only person managing this for all of North America. So it was a pretty big job, and it was a little
Yeah.
overwhelming. Um, so the normal day started with opening up the recalls from government agencies, and that was where the No Dead Babies thing actually came from. Was the next year when I actually started getting some help from my department, And whenever a day would go by and my team would be like, haha, no dead babies today, because that would be
Oh.
such a relief that we didn't have to deal with that for the day, because it would be something that was very common, that a recalled item came in, or there was a product safety complaint where someone said that their baby either died or almost died. Choking hazards, fall hazards, when that's what you're dealing with all day, every day, it's all you see. And so it's just
Yeah.
really nice to have a day where that's not a thing you see. And that was
Yeah.
always our goal, right? At the end of the day, that was our goal, for our team, was no dead babies. That was that was our end goal. And one of the things that was frustrating to me, so I had a toddler at the time, my stepchild, and then I actually got pregnant in 2011 and had my baby in the fall of 2011. And there were a whole bunch of things that were happening in the company at that time where Amazon got sued by the Federal Trade Commission in 2010 for mislabeling product. So they had mislabeled products as 100% bamboo, and you can't do that unless it's actually like literally bamboo. 100% bamboo is often used to label textiles that are actually made from bamboo. But the process to chemically break apart bamboo, because it's got a really tough outer skin, and then turn that into fibers and then turn it into thread that you can actually make stuff with, is actually really chemically intensive. And there's a lot of water byproducts, and it's actually not environmentally friendly at all. And so the FTC was basically suing, saying that people were saying 100% bamboo, ecologically friendly, et cetera, when the product is actually in no way ecologically friendly.
Yeah.
It's like one of the least ecologically friendly things you could buy.
Yeah.
So that Amazon got in trouble for that, because what they told the Federal Trade Commission was, our catalog is too big, we can't stop people from doing that. And the FTC was like, haha, nice try. No. And
Yes.
so that's actually what kicked all this stuff off, with Amazon actually having to start paying attention to safety and to regulations, was actually not because of somebody getting injured, which was kind of crazy. It was actually because of someone mislabeling, towels of all things. And so it was just kind of one of those situations where I was grateful that the FTC sued Amazon, because at that point, then there was more funding for our department. We were able to actually start doing some of the work that we needed to do. So I was the only person in 2010, and I had a team of 6 in 2011 as a result of this government action. And I think that's something that's really important for folks to know, is that if there isn't a clear financial impact to a corporation, it is unlikely, depending on the corporation, that they will make the choice to incur additional cost if there is no legal requirement to do it. And even sometimes if there is a legal requirement to do it, if no one's looking, sometimes they'll still just avoid doing it, right? So just because there is a law doesn't mean anyone's going to follow it. So that was the thing that I was frustrated about, was I knew that we were checking imports. Anything that Amazon was legally liable for, we were checking. But anything that we were selling that was bought in the United States, and anything that sellers were selling, we weren't looking at all. And as a customer, how could you possibly know the difference? Right? It was just going up for sale. It was ready for sale. And as a customer, you're just like, oh, it must be fine. Someone must be looking at this. And they weren't. No one was looking at it. And so hopefully it was good. Maybe it wasn't. Who knows? And so the person who would find out if it was good or not is the end customer. And to me, that wasn't acceptable. And that was very frustrating.
So from that, at least in my reading some about you, is that you then began to develop sort of some, maybe I want to call them protocols, about what makes something safe and what makes something not safe, and something that was user-friendly for the end consumer, for the moms and dads.
Absolutely.
And
So
that's
in my
part of,
book,
yes. And so can you talk a little bit about that, just that very practical knowledge that you pulled together from all of this yucky experience that you had?
Yeah, definitely. So there were some days where I was like, I need to just leave and get a cookie. We worked right down the street from a cafe, and there were multiple days where I just got up and went and got a cookie. So the whole first portion of the book is really trying to make it to where parents, now that you know this is a problem, now that you know for most marketplaces, it's very rare for any company running a marketplace to actually evaluate anything. So this isn't just an Amazon problem. It's just I was at Amazon, so I know how big of a problem
Yes.
it is there. But it's the same problem with Walmart or Etsy or any other marketplace. Is they're creating a platform for sellers to sell. They're not actually validating what's there. The contractual agreements are that the seller agrees to sell legal stuff, but no one's actually checking that. And so who knows if they are or not, and quite often they aren't.
Okay. Yep.
So at the end of the day, parents are responsible for what they bring into their home and for what they allow to stay in their home, right? You might get gifts, you might, get something off a wish list, and then you're looking at it, you're like, maybe not. But you're the one who's ultimately responsible, right? So then what you want to do is you want to look at the product. There's a few different rules that I have for folks who are trying to protect themselves and their families. The first one is about packaging. And I know it seems really boring. It's like a package. How is that a thing? Well, it's because most packaging in the US is legally mandated. And so if the packaging doesn't follow the legal mandate, then what else are they cheating on? Right. So if somebody can't even follow the most basic requirement, then they're probably not following the more complicated ones. So it's a really easy kind of cheat way to be like, oh, you don't know anything. I'm not going to buy from you. So
Yeah.
that's the first one. So, it's an easy way to remember. There's 4 required elements of packaging in the United States, and then a few other elements that are required depending on the product. But those 4 are: it has to have a brand, like a logo on the box somewhere. Then you also have to have a product name. So what is it that we're talking about? You have to have a net weight or quantity. And you'll see that sometimes it'll be in ounces, sometimes it'll be a count. It's because the manufacturer is allowed to choose what's most relevant to a customer, the net weight or the net quantity. And then the last thing is on the side or the back, there should be some sort of importer or distributor or manufacturer information. And that should have either the city, state, zip, and a website, or it should have the full physical address of the manufacturer, importer, or distributor. That is the bare minimum to be legal to sell in the US. So if you get something from Amazon that only has a barcode on it and that's it, if you don't like sometimes it's in a different spot, like clothing, all that information is in the hang tag. But most boxed item, it's on the box. And so if it's not there, then if it's just like a plain white box with a barcode on it, send it back. Don't worry about it. Just send it back. It's not worth it. It means they didn't follow the rules. So that's the first thing that I recommend to people. And then for children's products, in addition to those 4 main ones, and sometimes you'll also see like the country of origin, like made in China or made in the US. So in some cases, you'll also see for children's items, it's actually required to have a tracking label. And tracking labels don't have a set format, so it can be sometimes confusing. Like, what's a tracking label? So if you're looking at, say, I always check this with like the stuffed animals that my kids would get over the years. And on the label, you'll see something like the brand and the product name and the way to, like the usual things that are required in a hang tag. Then they'll also have something like 100% polyester or whatever. And then below that, they'll have something that usually has an RN number. That's typical. Clothing or some sort of cloth will have an RN number. Sometimes it won't. And then there will be some random code. And you're like, what the heck is that code? That is a tracking label. If the product does not have one of those codes somewhere, then don't keep it. So whenever I get something like a toy or clothing or a game or an item that's marketed to children, I'll actually go and look for the label. I'll go and I'm like, where is this little code? And it could be any format. So like one of the brands that we worked with, their format was the day of the year. And they did like a number of so it was like the 212th day of the year. And so it would be like 2/12/22, and then it would be a 3-digit code for the factory. And so then the manufacturer knew this product was made on this day of this year at this location. That's the point of these labels. And so it doesn't matter what the format is, as long as the manufacturer knows where and when it was made. So you'll see it in all kinds of formats. But you'll see it like if it's like a toy, like a molded toy, like a, like if it's a figurine, like a Paw Patrol toy, and you'll turn it over. It'll often have made in China in like molded into the product. And it'll also have like a little code next to it. And that means that it's got the tracking label. And so if you get something in a gift or baby shower or something, and there's no code, then that means that they didn't follow that rule. So the labeling is the number one thing. Like if they can't even follow something as basic as putting a label on the thing, then I don't trust anything else they did. So that's the first one. The second one is ask for a certificate. Nearly everything has some sort of certificate, like not decorative, hardware, like a knob for a cabinet, probably won't have a
Yeah.
certificate. But something like skincare cream, for yourself,
Mhm.
like if you're
Mhm.
using something, or mascara, or a piece of furniture, or a kid's toy, or a crib. All of these have some sort of certificate. If it's for children, it's a CPC, or a children's product certificate. If it's something like furniture or carpet or something, it's going to be a general certificate of conformity. If
Mhm.
it's something for like skin, or a topical, like um, a temporary tattoo, or mascara or something, then it'll
Oh,
have a
uh-huh.
certificate of analysis. And each
Oh,
one of
okay.
those actually have some sort of documentation from the manufacturer that says this is safe. And so one of the
Mhm.
easiest ways that you can validate is this safe is you can just ask the manufacturer, hey, can I get a certificate? And we
Mhm.
actually had a funny thing happen. I was talking to a Wall Street Journal reporter a couple years ago, and she had her son's birthday party the next week. And I talked her through this whole concept of certificates. And so she was like, "I'm going to
Yeah.
run an experiment." And she asked for certificates from the three sellers that she'd been looking at a particular type of car for
Okay.
her son,
Mhm.
and sent the
Mhm.
request
Mhm.
to them, because Amazon lets you email the seller through the system, right? You can just click on the seller name and write them
Yeah.
an email. So she went and
Yep.
wrote each of them an email. Hey, can you send the certificate for your product? And two of them ignored her. And one of them sent the certificate within 24 hours. And so she bought
Hmm.
that one. So that was easy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That is one way to see which one is the best product, because there you sit
Exactly.
with a whole list of products. They all look sort of similar,
Yep.
and then you say, do you go with the cheapest? Do you go with the one that's, going to get there the soonest? You're saying go with the one that has certificate.
Exactly. If you're talking about your kids,
Mhm.
right? So like for me, I do paint by numbers as a way to kind of relax and calm down at the end of a long day, right? I
Mhm.
have a pretty high stress job with sellers who are always asking like, Amazon, shut me down, help. And so there's a lot of kind of stress throughout the day. So I do paint by numbers. Well, I am quite certain those things are not compliant. I'm absolutely convinced they don't meet U.S. law around
Mhm.
art products. But I'm an adult. I'm not going to smear it all over my hands. I'm going to be
Mhm.
careful with it, right? So the
Mhm.
actual impact of something being unsafe for me as an adult, I'm not going to use it in a way that's going to injure me,
Mhm.
right? When it
Mhm.
comes to a kid, like, they'll sometimes kids will think it's hilarious to be like, I'm going to paint my hands now. This is terrible when it's like leaded paint,
Mhm.
right? So
Yes. Yes.
whenever it comes to
Yes.
kids, you want to get safe paints, or you want to get safe toys, and so on. So I always have that as if I'm saving money, I'm going to save money on something for me. I am not going to be cheap when it comes to my kids, right?
Mhm.
Like the,
Mhm.
the impact of lead, of cadmium, of various kinds of plastic additives are way worse for a growing body than it is for an adult. An adult can often
Mhm.
handle a lot of toxic stuff, which is kind of crazy,
Mhm.
but we can.
Yes.
Whereas it
Mhm.
really impacts a growing child much more extensively. And so it's important to make sure that spend the extra $10. I was actually talking to someone. That was one of the things that is really surprised me, how people don't understand how much things actually cost. So something like children's shoes. All children's shoes have to be, every single component has to be tested. And there's
Hmm.
minimum between 5 and 6 components, even with the most simple pair of shoes. And so you
Mhm.
have basically a $750 lab test, plus all of the component tests, plus you're buying typically from certified suppliers. So if I see a pair of children's shoes that cost less than $30, I assume they're cheating. I don't assume it's a good
Ah.
deal. I assume they're cheating me in some way. They cheated somewhere. And so I think a lot of people have this idea that, oh, cheaper is better. And if they actually
Mhm.
knew what cheaper meant, cheaper means
Mhm.
buying the leaded buttons that no one else will buy. Cheaper means
Mhm.
buying the toxic glue. Cheaper means buying the leather that's been tanned chemically instead of tanned naturally. So like cheaper has a cost. It's just often we can't see it. A lot of those
Mhm.
kids who were injured in Flint, Michigan with the leaded water, like they weren't visibly different. They just started getting angrier, and
Mhm.
some of them started getting physically
Yeah.
stunted because you can't see the impact of these chemical,
Yes.
these problems, and I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest concern for me is there are those injuries where, a baby dies in a crib, right? Because it was substandard materials and the crib broke, or it was used
Yeah.
for too many kids and it broke. But then there's the
Yeah.
insidious ones like the art supplies, where
Mhm.
it's, it may be absolutely poisonous to use those art supplies.
Mhm.
And you as a parent, how are you supposed to know that?
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you control everything that your kids do? I'm a grandma 2.5 days a week, and so there are the markers and there are the paints, and there are 3 or 4 kids running around, and you can say you're going to supervise everything, but often you supervise on the back
Right.
end of things. Little 1-year-old
I
was
always
crawling around on
focused
the
on
ground, and
Oh, because they'll do all kinds of things, right? And the little ones always put everything in their
yes,
mouth. So I always focused
yes,
on brands. So like when you're buying something
hmm
for a small child, I will only buy something from Crayola, from a brand like Graco, or from Melissa and Doug. For a
hmm
child
hmm
under 3, unless I have the time to research and actually ask for a certificate and do that,
hmm
I only buy from big brands. And the main
hmm
reason is because they have a reputation to protect. They don't want to get sued.
yeah,
So,
true.
so they're making sure to
Hmm
do all the work that they're supposed to. Whereas a lot
yep,
of times small
hmm
brands are either ignorant, or what's way worse is on Amazon. About probably 8 years ago or so, Amazon thought that it was better for consumers to go directly to the factory. So the idea was, oh, it's cheaper to go straight to China and then have it ship in. The problem is, if you're trying to import something into the US, it takes about, I think, 3 days or so to set up an LLC. Then you get your EIN from the IRS. Then you can get your customs bond. You can have a whole new business set up within about 2 weeks. So if you're trying
hmm
to import unsafe stuff, and then Customs and Border Patrol or the Consumer Product Safety Commission find out you're importing unsafe stuff, they'll shut down your entity. Well, you can have a new one up in 2 weeks. So who cares?
yeah.
So what they would do when they started bringing in these direct from China factories, they brought them in without checking any of the product they were selling. So they brought in the product and they're selling it for cheap, and no one's checking if it's safe.
hmm Yep. hmm
So just
And
because it's cheap doesn't mean it's good, right?
yeah, well, indeed, and that's often the tension for those young families is I need something that's cheap that fits within my budget. I want my kid to really like it, and at the same time, I don't want my kid to get sick or to have long-term anything from it. And so the stress for them of trying to balance where is the cost balance to the safety balance, especially if I'm buying for 3 or 4 kids. Because one kid is one thing, but when I have to buy new shoes or something for 2 or 3 kids, then that all of that cost plays into such a decision process about, do I have the money for this? Do I really have to spend the money for the $30+ shoes, or can I buy the 15 or $7.99 shoes?
And I think that's such a great question. And it's actually informed a lot about how I buy products. So for myself, my son has maybe 2 pairs of shoes at a time, and that's it. And I just won't buy extras because I want to make sure that it's the ones that I know are good. And then I have to replace them every 6 months because he outgrows them. So
You know that,
then
yes.
it's just, well, 2 pairs of shoes, that's it. Sorry, can't do more.
Mhm,
And there's certain
mhm,
things, especially anything that touches the skin, anything that will be potentially in the mouth. Obviously, the most important ones are 3 and under, right? Because those are the age that
yes,
are literally everything in their mouth.
yes,
It's just,
absolutely, yes,
what are you going to do about
yes.
them, right? They will
Mhm,
put everything in
mhm,
their mouth. But it's
yes,
all about prioritization, right? So something like shoes
mhm,
and clothes that's touching the skin, I'm really particular
mhm,
about that. We pretty much only
mhm,
bought
mhm,
Carters. I didn't have anything with decals, all cotton, like just being really careful because, you know,
mhm,
when they're really little, they're even more sensitive to any sort of chemical
yes,
disruptions, right?
yep,
So that was
mhm,
just my rule. I just wouldn't have as much, but I just spend the money
mhm,
on, like, 5 onesies and just wash a bunch.
yep,
It's
yep.
like, oh, I said, I'd rather
They're
have the
little, they
best
can fit
ones
in
than
any load.
right,
Mhm,
exactly. You're just washing clothes every day, which isn't ideal,
yep,
but
yep,
it's better than,
mhm,
potentially injuring the kid. And as they get older,
yeah,
it's a little bit different, right? Like as I said, my son is 10 now. So there's a lot of things where I'm like, he's
yep.
not stupid enough to do that now. So you
Mhm.
can relax as they get older, right? They're not going to stick everything in their mouth.
Yes, well, you can relax until they're about 14, and then you better up the game again.
Right, right. Then there's all
Because they get
those
that
challenges
teenage
and
brain,
dares, and
and it
you're like,
goes a
why
little
did you put
crazy.
that in your mouth?
Yes,
It's a
why
different
did
kind
you
of
try
issue.
that? Mhm. Yep.
That's so true. So true. And, one of the things that I talk about in my book is a lot of the things that people don't think about. It's really obvious with babies, right? But one of the things that people often don't think about is unsecured chemicals in their home. So a lot of people will have Drano, or they'll have some sort of cleaning chemicals. Or my favorite is you go
Yeah.
into any given garage and there's going to be some serious hazardous materials in people's garages, right? And I don't know anyone who has a gun who doesn't also have a gun safe, because the risk to their family is understood, right? But actually, the likelihood of getting a call to the poison control center because the kid got into something hazardous or ingested or touched something hazardous is actually way more likely than some sort of gun accident. But most people
Yes.
don't have a hazardous materials product safe. They'll have a gun safe, but they won't have a safe to
Yes.
hold all of the toxic chemicals in their house, So even
That's
things like
true.
that, just kind of changing the way you think about products in your environment. And,
Mhm.
a lot of people don't realize, like, warnings, they're like, oh, there's so many warnings. Are people actually that dumb? Yes, they are. The
Mhm.
only reason why warnings exist is because somebody got sued. That's why they're
Yeah,
there.
that's right. Mhm. Mhm. And can you talk a little bit? I know that, especially for the first babies, that then there's, we have to buy a crib, we have to buy baby carriers, we have to buy
Yeah.
strollers, we have to buy car seats. Is there anything sort of in that larger category of things that new families purchase that they should really be looking out for? Do we just look for function? Does it fit in my car? Does it fit in my trunk? Is it too heavy for me to lift? Those kinds of things? Or are there other things that we would say would be um, really more oriented towards either kid safety or parental safety when buying those things?
I think that's such a great question. The main thing that I look for are
Mhm.
brands that are parent centric and baby centric. So, for example, I mentioned Graco. Graco is one of
Yep.
my favorite brands because even if there's like one complaint about something of some
Mhm.
parent who potentially got a report of an injury to the kid, they will spam everybody. Hey guys, just letting you know
Oh,
there's this problem. And
oh,
so everyone knows there's this problem. They run a
mhm,
recall. Amazon will send out an email to you. Make sure you don't opt out because those emails
mhm,
come directly from
mhm.
Amazon. If you opt out,
Ah,
you won't see the recall
mhm.
emails.
Ah,
So
yep.
something like that, if Graco gets anything, they'll tell you. And so the brand is
Mhm,
actually really important. There's certain brands that I won't buy.
mm,
Graco is one of the ones that I think they're one of the good guys. And
mhm.
then
Okay.
the other piece is thinking about, when you're thinking about the safety aspect of it and the functional aspect of it. There was one product I was looking at where it was like a diaper bag, and it
Mhm,
had a baby sleep area in it, plus a diaper changing
mhm,
table. But it was stored in the diaper bag section of Amazon. And the way that Amazon's system works when they're actually trying to check for baby stuff, because they now check some baby items, not all, but they check some baby items,
mhm.
is it's based on the subcategory that's in. And diapers bags are not for babies, they're for moms. And so if something is in the
Yes.
diaper bag category, it won't be checked, even if it's also being marketed as a sleep aid or as a diaper changing table, which are required to meet the standard.
Mhm.
So this diaper
Oh, okay.
changing bag thingy, it was like a 3-in-1. You could open the bag and pull out, and it would be like a miniature crib kind of thing. Well, it didn't meet
Yes.
any of the requirements for a mini crib. The sides didn't look like they were mesh. It looked
Mhm,
like it could roll up on the side. Like, it was like a suffocation hazard
mhm,
in the making right there. And I was just
mm,
like, oh my
yep.
God, I can't believe that they can actually sell this.
Mhm,
But it was just a glitch in Amazon's system where if it's in diaper bags, they're treating it like a diaper bag. But this was like a
yep.
three in
Mhm,
one. So the number one thing
mhm,
that I worry about, that I spend way more time on than anything else, is
mhm.
anywhere the baby might be sleeping, because people aren't usually watching. Usually you're
True.
watching in other cases,
Mhm,
right? You're watching when it's a
mhm,
bath time, you're watching when it's playtime. But when the baby's sleeping and in a sleep carrier or a crib or
mhm,
the stroller or
mhm.
wherever, you usually don't go looking. So
Yes.
you come back when the baby starts making noise, right? And so
Yes.
that's actually one of the most dangerous times for an infant, is actually when they're unattended in some sort of sleep
Mhm.
device.
Yes.
So that's the one where I'll actually put in a lot more effort to contact the
Okay.
manufacturer. Where's your certificate?
Yep.
What are the instructions? When I got my baby carrier, I think it was 42 pages of instructions and warnings. And I read every single page, because that only exists because somebody screwed up. Somebody lost their kid, or
Yes.
somebody ended up in the
Yeah.
hospital. And I don't want that to be my
Mhm.
kid. So
Yeah.
I read
Yeah.
through the entire booklet. And a lot of people just
Mhm.
toss those right into the trash. They're like, oh, I'm smart. I'm good.
Yep.
but you're not
Yeah.
that smart, especially if you're a new parent. When was the last time you held a
Yeah.
baby? Oh, right, you didn't. So read the book.
Yes.
So
Mhm,
if there's a
mhm. Yeah.
little warning booklet that comes with the product, read it, because some
Mhm.
other sleep deprived new parent screwed that up, and you don't want to be the one
Yes.
screwing that up. So,
Yeah.
things like,
Yeah.
putting a mattress underneath a cover instead of on top of a cover can be the
Oh,
difference
yes.
between your kid getting stuck in a corner and suffocating or
Yes.
being just fine. Just one little thing like that,
Yes.
one tiny
Yes.
mistake.
Yep.
And so it's just not worth it. Like, anytime
Mhm.
they're alone, spend the time to understand those products. And then if you're watching, it's
Mhm.
obviously a little bit easier. The other thing that
Yep.
I'll say is, like, for me, is a huge issue is button batteries of any kind. That is a major issue to me, and especially in multi-children age households.
Mhm. Mhm.
So my older child's grandparents got them a birthday card that they recorded a song into. And so it
Oh,
had a
yeah, yeah.
button back that was recording and everything. Well, the problem is there's no requirement for a locked card. It's a greeting card. So if you're doing like a toy, they have to be locked in. There's actually
Yep.
really hard to open the battery compartment
Okay.
on a toy on purpose so that a baby can't open it. Well, in a
Mhm.
greeting card, it's actually really easy to rip it apart and get the card out, depending on how it was made and who the manufacturer was. So I waited for my child to listen to it, really enjoyed it, and then sometime in the next day or two, the card mysteriously disappeared. It went bye bye right in the trash, because I don't want to have
Mhm.
anything that's got a loose lithium ion battery or a loose button battery,
Yeah.
anything like that hanging around, because my son was only about a year old at the time. He was putting everything
Yep.
in his mouth.
Yep.
And so, you
Yes.
just want to be
Yes.
really cautious about, like, multi-age
Mhm.
households, because some things are perfectly fine for your 8-year-old that are
Mm.
toxic or dangerous to your
Mhm.
1-year-old.
Mhm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point just in terms of remembering that you have from little ones to kids that are could be more responsible or a little bit more smart, like, I wouldn't put that battery in my mouth,
Right.
and saying, um, we just have to pay attention to all those ages, and sometimes when we're parenting, that's a lot of work, um, but it also makes for really smart parenting, is to be sure that the 2 of you as husband and wife, mom and dad, have really teamed up to be sure that what's coming and what's going is good for everybody in your house. Um,
And one
and
thing I'd say
it's
about
very
that
tempting
is
to say,
is
well, the 7-year-old put it in their room,
yeah.
and so it's
But then the
fine.
baby comes in, or the 7-year-old goes and plays with it, and, and
Yes.
I've heard this a lot from folks I've talked to, where the moms are a lot more concerned about risk, and the dads are like, "Oh, it'll
Mhm.
be fine, it's fine." And it's
Yes.
actually a really common thing for men in general to just not see the risks and
Yes.
things as being more important. And I would just say, it's totally fine to be that way about yourself. Take whatever risks you want to that you feel comfortable with.
Mhm.
But the fact is that a baby has no choice. You
Mhm.
are their caregiver. They have no choices.
Mhm.
They know nothing. And so you
Yes.
can't really be too careful with a baby. It's not
Yes.
possible.
Yes. Yes, and that's very true, and that's often a good conversation for husbands and wives to have as they talk about how they're gonna co-parent, is when one of us is distressed about something, who do we follow? The person who goes, "No, it's not a big deal," or the person who goes, "Yeah, but I'm not gonna sleep," and how to blend
Right,
those 2
right.
together,
And maybe there's a little
yeah.
bit of change that happens when the kid's 6 to
Mhm.
10 years old
Yep,
or so, where everyone's
absolutely.
okay with a little bit more risk. But at least
Yes.
for me, I was like, "Nope, baby takes precedence."
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, and certainly, I mean, I think that that's a very wise stance. We just have to make sure that mom and dad are working that nicely together. One of the other things that I wondered about, because just when I read reviews, I'm like, okay, is a verified review a thing? Is that like, do I trust that? Do I not trust that? How do you suggest we read those verified reviews?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all a verified review means is that somebody actually bought it from Amazon, and Amazon can link that review back to an actual purchase. So just because you
Oh.
didn't buy it doesn't mean you can't review it. Anybody can review anything on Amazon,
Mhm.
right? So the verified
Mhm.
review just means somebody went on Amazon, they bought it, and then later reviewed it. Now, that doesn't mean that they were actually, being honest. They could have been paid to leave that review. They
Mhm.
could have been paid to buy it and leave the review. There are lots of situations where, somebody may have been a little bit more generous with their praise than they needed to be. But all that the
Mhm.
verified review means is that somebody bought it from Amazon. That's it. And so sometimes you can't tell, like, okay, so that person said it was really great. Well, I hope for the best. And it's totally like, there have been
Mhm,
products that people have loved. I absolutely loved my Fisher
mhm,
Price bouncy thingy. I actually had one of
mhm,
those when my son was little, and that's actually like as a baby furniture item is more likely to kill your kid than anything else. And my son loved it.
mhm,
He loved it.
mhm.
So
Yes.
it's just because they're great
Yes.
reviews doesn't mean that it's safe, unfortunately. And
Yep,
I'm sure,
yep,
when I first came home, my parents put me in the bottom drawer of
yes.
their dresser. They took out the drawer
Mhm,
and just put me on the bottom. And I'm
mhm.
sure no one's going to
Yep,
give that a 5-star review for a crib, but it was perfectly safe.
yeah.
So
Yes, mhm, yes, yeah, yep, yeah, I agree with you. Um, so I'm sort of thinking that our moms and dads are gonna be about done with the time they have to listen, because somebody has gotten in trouble or is crying or mom and dad is actually falling asleep.
so true.
Um, they wouldn't fall asleep listening to us, really, right? But here's my just my other question is, as you think through what else you have focused on in your book, is there anything else that you think is really valuable for parents to know that I haven't touched on through my questions, but that you're sort of rattling around in the back of your head of, I'd like to add this just to help moms and dads um, be, how do I want to say that? To be the safest they can be, but also that maybe it's a piece of information that would help moms and dads see that reading your book would really be worth their time and energy.
Yeah, I think that the main thing with the way I structured the book is the first part of it is just giving you the reason why this is important, why corporations are
Mhm.
not out there to protect you. It's literally built into capitalist system. It's meant to maximize the value of the shareholder, right?
Uh,
So they're
mhm,
not there to
yes.
protect you. They're there to maximize shareholder value. And so you have to protect yourself. The rest of the book,
Mhm,
probably about 3/4 of it, is just listings of products. Here's a product. Here's an example of
mhm,
an issue with it. Here's what you should look for.
mm,
And be really
yeah,
focused on, okay, here's how I can fix the issues in my own home. Here's how I can be prepared.
mhm,
Here's how I can understand what this label
yeah,
means. And just really practical so that people,
mhm,
unless you've actually worked in this industry, why would you know what that label means? No one knows what that label
yeah,
means.
yeah. Mhm,
And so just
mhm,
something that's really
mhm,
practical and applicable to your daily life, and just making it to where if you are about to have a kid, read the durable infant and toddler product chapter. It's a whole book
mhm,
just on these products that are defined that way legally, strollers and
yep,
cribs and high
mhm,
chairs and so on.
mhm,
All this stuff. This is a great one to be like, oh, that's the this ASTM standard. Now I need to go look for that when
mhm,
I'm looking at the packaging. Just something really basic like that to where now you know it's a problem. Well, we don't want to scare you without giving you something you can do to
yeah,
fix it.
yes, yes,
So
yes, 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 good point, yes, yeah. So you're saying that a good part of the book really is, a bit of a resource book. If moms and dads go, "That book has more than 100 pages or more than 10 pages, I don't read more than 10 pages," kind of thing, that you're saying, "No, it's more of a resource book. Get through the first part of it to really understand it, and then use it as a resource to be able to say,
absolutely.
'I
So
need to
if you
buy this
don't have
kind of
kids,
toy,' so"
exactly.
mhm,
If you don't have kids,
yeah,
go to the section on kitchen or the living
yep,
room area. Like what are the issues
yeah,
there? Or if you're
mhm,
trying to buy jewelry, how is jewelry defined? Like what
okay.
it's funny there's actually a bunch of rules about what is gold and what is silver. It's like
Oh,
there's so many things in product
yeah,
compliance that are just like, really, that's a law? Yes, that is a law. So there's just a ton of stuff that people just don't even
yeah.
think about, and you're like, oh right, of course,
Yes,
somebody made a law about that at some point.
yes, 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 yes. Well, I really appreciate your attention to detail and understanding and sharing with moms and dads how important the details are, and that taking the effort to pay attention to them can save them a good amount of heartache and anxiety further down the road.
And
And
that's
they
absolutely
run
my
on little
goal.
energy.
Absolutely.
But
I remember being sleep deprived.
yeah, you know? Um, and so being able to say, "This is worth the effort. Turn off your Netflix, put down your phone for a few minutes, and get this in your Kindle format, get this in the hard copy, but take a few minutes to check out what's around your house and what you need to get for birthdays and that sort of stuff." Um, because if your kids are safe, everybody sleeps better. Um,
Absolutely. And that was always our goal.
yeah.
No dead babies. End of the day, everyone's happy, everyone's safe, everyone's healthy. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad that we connected. Um, I wish you the best, both in your everyday work there. It sounds still like a whole lot of details that would overwhelm me. But also thank you for making the book and for putting that together.
And thank you so
I
much for
am
having me to
hoping that,
talk about it.
yes, my pleasure. It's been a very enjoyable time spent with you. Um, Thank you again. And to my moms and dads out there, remember that this is important stuff. Don't forget to take care of the details. We know that your brains are tired. We know that you don't always have so much energy. So maybe do what Rachel did. Pick your favorite brands, research them, and stick with them. Take the time to pay attention and to watch your kiddos so that they stay safe. And that will keep your heart happy. I'm always grateful that you take this time to join me and grateful that you took the time to also listen to Rachel Greer about her new book, No Dead Babies, because it will help keep your family safe, secure, and full of fun. We'll talk to you again later. Bye-bye. Ah, there you go. Mhm,
Awesome. I
mhm.
have to run. I'm so sorry,
Yeah,
but I apologize for being late, but I just moved my next one a little bit later, but now I gotta jump over to that one. Thank you so
you sure
much for
do.
your questions. Really appreciate you
Yeah.
guys. All right, take
Thank you
care.
so much. I'll let you know the podcast should be out in a couple of weeks.
Oh,
Okay?
wonderful. And I will absolutely share it and let people know. Thank
All
you.
righty. Good. Good. Go run.
Bye.
Take care of your other things. Bye-bye. All right. We're good? You looked good on your end? Okay. Yes. All right. Good. All right. I'm out. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.